Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really close look at some research synthesis, focusing on a global threat that kind of starts right in our homes.
That's right.
We're diving into a paper called When Pets Become Pests: The Role of the Exotic Pet Trade in Producing Invasive Vertebrate Animals. The lead author is Julie L. Lockwood.
Yeah, and it's a crucial piece because for a long time, research on the exotic pet trade mostly hit on, well, two main things.
Right.
Either how collecting wild animals impacts native biodiversity, taking too many, or the risk of diseases jumping species.
Zoonotic diseases.
Exactly. But this paper pulls together research from all over ecology, economics, even sociology to laser focus on maybe the biggest threat of all: how the trade directly leads to invasive vertebrate populations getting established.
And establishing self-sustaining populations, that's the key.
Precisely. And it's urgent because this market is just ballooning.
And we're not talking theory here, are we? I mean, this is a massive global business, billions of dollars.
Oh, absolutely.
Thousands of species, tens of millions of individual animals being shipped around constantly, internationally and domestically. And we already see the results when this goes wrong. You only have to look at the red lionfish in the Caribbean.
Devastating the reefs there.
Or, the Burmese python situation down in South Florida. It's decimating local wildlife. So the pet trade isn't just a potential source of invasion. It's a proven one. And it's growing.
So maybe we should start with definitions. What exactly counts as an exotic pet, according to this paper?
Good point.
Well, they're clear. It's not your typical dog or cat. These are animals kept for non-utilitarian reasons, basically, not for work or food, and they don't have that long history of domestication.
And the scale of ownership is just huge. The paper notes over half of households in places like the US, the UK, Australia. They have some kind of pet.
That's a lot of homes.
And then, specifically for the US, they point out something pretty striking. About 50% of all the pets in US households actually fall into this exotic category.
Wow, 50%. That really does make you rethink what pet ownership looks like today, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's not just Fido and Fluffy anymore.
Not at all. And some sectors within that exotic category have just exploded. Take reptiles and amphibians.
Oh, yeah.
In the U.S., the number of households owning them more than doubled in less than 20 years. Went from about 2.4 million back in '94 up to 5.6 million by 2012.
That kind of rapid diversification must make tracking things a nightmare, especially with the trade network being so, well, complicated.
Exactly. You've got legal trade, illegal trade, and then this huge gray area of domestic trade that's often completely undocumented. It's all tangled together.
So much is happening under the radar.
Right. And while reptiles get a lot of press because of things like pythons,
Sure, they're very visible.
the sheer volume of the fish market dwarfs everything else. Just look at the U.S. again. Importing over 11 million marine aquarium fish every single year.
11 million marine fish.
Yep, representing something like 2,300 different species. And that's just marine, the global freshwater fish trade. It's an order of magnitude larger. It's almost hard to comprehend the scale.
With numbers like that, the economic driver must be immense. What did the sources find about the money behind bringing in all these new species?
Oh, it's all about profit. Pure and simple. Just the U.S. reptile industry, for example, is estimated to bring in around $1.4 billion annually.
Wow.
But here's the critical part for invasion risk: the pressure to constantly introduce new types of animals, novelty cells.
Right, the next cool thing.
Exactly. Economists figure that importing just one additional new species can net importers around $90,000 in long-term profits. That creates this huge incentive for what they call taxonomic novelty, always finding and bringing in something new, something people haven't seen before.
And the way these animals are sold has changed too, right? It's not just pet stores anymore.
Not at all. The rise of websites, social media, huge reptile expos, it bypasses a lot of the old checks and balances.
Direct-to-consumer sales are booming.
Massively. One study looked at U.S. web vendors just between 2012 and 2016. They found over 94,000 unique listings just for reptiles and amphibians online.
Okay, so the market's enormous. It's fueled by big money, constantly pushing new species. Millions are flowing into homes. So the crucial question becomes, how do they get out? How does a pet become a pest?
Well, the paper highlights two main ways this happens: either accidental escape,
Like a broken cage or something.
yeah, or maybe getting loose during transport, or, and this is a big one, deliberate release by the owner.
Why would someone just let an exotic pet go.
Often it's because the reality of owning the animal becomes too much. It gets bigger than expected, lives longer than they thought, becomes aggressive, maybe gets sick, and vet care is expensive or unavailable.
And they just open the door.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Or take it to a local pond or park, and we actually have some numbers on this, surveys of aquarium owners. They found that somewhere between 2% and 10% admit to deliberately releasing fish they didn't want anymore.
2 to 10%. That
Yep.
might sound small, but multiply that by millions of owners.
Exactly. It adds up fast. And that doesn't even count some unique cultural factors.
Like what?
Well, the paper mentions things like animals bought specifically for release in religious ceremonies, which is common in parts of Asia.
Ah, right, like merit release.
Precisely. Or remember those weird live animal keychains reported in China a while back? Tiny turtles or fish sealed in plastic.
Oh, yeah, those were disturbing.
Well, the animals either die quickly or people feel bad and release them. Either way, the chance of those ending up in the local environment is really high.
So escapes and releases, and the result.
The result is stark. The evidence is clear now. The pet trade is a primary, sometimes the primary, driver of invasions for certain animal groups.
You mentioned Florida earlier.
Yeah, Florida's a hotspot. Nearly 85%, 85, of the 140 non-native reptiles and amphibians introduced there came via the pet trade.
85%, that's staggering.
It is. And it's not just Florida. A big study in the EU found that for amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds, the main source of newly established invasive populations was escapes from the exotic pet trade.
Okay, now here's a point in the paper that really caught my eye. This idea of invasion debt.
Ah, yes, the lag effect. That's crucial.
Explain that. So all those high numbers we just talked about, 85% in Florida, the EU findings, those are based on trade patterns from when?
Decades ago, mostly. There's usually a significant lag, often a decade or even longer, between when the trade volume for a species really ramps up.
And when you actually see a self-sustaining population established in the wild.
Exactly. So think about that explosive growth we discussed earlier, the doubling of reptile ownership, the boom in online sales, the constant push for novelty.
That's all relatively recent, the last 10, 20 years.
Right. Which means we've likely built up a massive invasion debt. The problems we see now with lionfish and pythons, they're likely just the first installments.
So the implication is the worst might still be yet to come because the trade boom that's already happened.
That's the sobering conclusion, yes. The establishment rates we see today are probably going to rise significantly in the coming decades based on the trade volumes of the recent past.
Right. That leads us straight to the next question then. If we know they're getting out, and more will likely get out, which ones actually make it? Which ones establish?
Good question. The paper breaks it down into three main factors that determine success. First, and maybe most obvious, is ecological fit.
Meaning
Meaning the species has to actually be able to survive in the new place physiologically. You know, marine fish released in a freshwater lake isn't going to last long.
or a tropical lizard released in Canada during winter.
Exactly. So tolerance for the local climate, finding the right food, things like that. Established invaders often have traits like high reproductive rates, high fecundity, and broad environmental tolerances. They're adaptable.
Okay, ecological fit. What's next?
The second factor, and the paper really emphasizes this one, is propagal pressure.
Propagal pressure. Sounds technical.
It basically just means how many individuals are introduced, how often, and in how many locations. And the research is incredibly clear on this. Success is strongly correlated with the sheer volume of animals imported and sold.
So the more individuals of a species that are out there in the trade.
The higher the chance some will escape or be released, and the higher the chance those released individuals will find each other, reproduce, and establish a population. It's almost a numbers game. Success links directly to the total number imported and the number of years it was available in the market.
Flood the system, flood the environment. Makes sense.
And these releases often aren't random. They tend to cluster around cities and suburbs.
Because that's where the pets are.
Precisely. High pet ownership density, and often near water bodies, lakes, canals, coasts, which makes it easy for aquatic species to spread. So urban areas, especially in warmer climates, become these massive introduction hotspots.
Okay, ecological fit, propagal pressure. What's the third factor?
The third one is fascinating because it links biology to human behavior, consumer behavior, and market dynamics.
Ah, like why people buy certain pets.
Exactly, and why they might release them. The paper talks about things like bandwagon effects, where a species becomes suddenly popular, cheap, and widely available.
Like the green iguanas you mentioned earlier.
Perfect example. They were the hot reptile pet for a while, sold in huge numbers, often quite cheaply,
And then they get big and maybe a bit mean.
and people release them. Those high-volume bandwagon species are often the most likely to end up released or escape, particularly if they turn out to be harder to care for long-term than people expected. There's also a snob effect for rare, expensive species, but the sheer volume of bandwagon pets makes them a bigger invasion risk overall.
And the trade data backs this up, right?
Yeah.
You said the green iguana was nearly half the U.S. reptile trade for years.
46% between 1996 and 2012, yeah. And now, established populations in Hawaii, Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, it's a direct line.
And for fish, too.
Same story. Research shows that a pretty small percentage of marine fish species, like the top 12% most heavily traded, account for a wildly disproportionate number of introductions.
So, again, volume is key. Availability seems to be a much stronger predictor of invasion risk than trying to guess which species has the right biological traits alone.
It really seems that way. Tropical pressure is king, which brings us to, well, what we don't know. The paper argues there are some critical knowledge gaps we urgently need to fill if we want to manage this risk effectively.
Okay, what are they missing?
Well, first, there's a huge geographic and cultural bias in the research. Almost everything we know comes from the US, Europe, and Australia.
But the pet trade is global.
Massively global. And it's exploding in emerging economies. Think Brazil, China, Southeast Asia. We know almost nothing about the trade dynamics or release pathways there.
And pet keeping reasons might be totally different, right?
Completely. The paper mentions things like the tradition of keeping caged songbirds on bar counters in Brazil, or the religious release practices in Asia we touched on. These aren't the same motivations or scenarios as in, say, the UK. We can't just apply Western findings globally.
Okay, so broader geographic and cultural understanding. What's the second gap?
It's the interplay of traits and behavior. We don't really understand the connection between what makes a species profitable in the trade and what makes it a successful invader.
How so?
Well, think about it. Are the traits that make a species easy and cheap to breed in captivity, like high fecundity, fast growth, the same traits that help it establish in the wild?
I see. The economics might inadvertently select for invasion potential.
Possibly. Or is it more about behavioral traits? Are animals released because they become aggressive or too difficult to handle? We need to connect the market drivers, the animal's biology, and the owner's behavior. That link is missing.
Right. What's the third gap?
This one's really tricky. Policy evaluation and public emotion. Meaning exotic pets are often, well, people find them charismatic, compelling, cute even.
Sure. That's why people want them.
But that emotional connection leads to really fierce public opposition when it comes to control or eradication programs for invasive pets. Think about campaigns to remove lionfish or educational efforts about Nile monitors in Florida. There can be pushback.
So even if the science says removal is necessary, public opinion can stop it.
It can certainly complicate it immensely. Any policy, whether it's prevention before introduction or control after establishment, needs a really strong evidence base to even have a chance of gaining public acceptance and actually working. Emotion plays a huge role.
Okay, that makes sense. And the last gap,
Finally, there's the perennial problem of the black market, illegal trade.
which is inherently hard to study.
Incredibly hard. And the paper suggests that just trying to watch for illegal trade, surveillance is probably not enough and very expensive.
So what's the alternative?
They argue for shifting focus towards deterrence. Figuring out how to really increase the costs for illegal traders, think higher probability of getting caught, tougher legal penalties, or conversely, finding ways to decrease the benefits hitting their profits, maybe reducing demand. It's about changing the risk-reward calculation for the traders themselves.
So pulling this all together, what's the big takeaway here?
Well, I mean...
It seems incredibly complex, doesn't it? The paper makes it clear that tackling biological invasions from the pet trade isn't just an ecology problem.
Not at all. You absolutely have to integrate social perceptions, market forces, economics, consumer psychology, and the ecological science. They're all interconnected.
The threat seems undeniable, and that idea of the invasion debt makes it feel really urgent. Like we're running out of time on some of this.
I think that's fair to say. It really demands a truly concerted interdisciplinary effort. We need economists talking to ecologists, talking to sociologists, talking to policymakers.
Which leaves us with a really challenging thought, doesn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
It boils down to the central conflict. You have this powerful multi-billion-dollar global industry with huge economic interests and strong consumer demand for a constantly changing array of exotic animals. People want these pets. The market wants to provide them. But the environmental consequences of the inevitable escapes and releases the biological invasions are severe, costly, and incredibly long-lasting. So the fundamental question is, how can policy possibly balance that desire, that profitability, with the profound long-term ecological damage? That's the tightrope we have to walk.